Hey everybody, this is a prototype podcast project. Operation Iron and Ivy, a Psalm 40 production. Out of the Mire, a historical investigation series. In 1876, the United States celebrated its success as a sovereign nation by throwing the biggest birthday party in American history. The Centennial International Exposition in Philadelphia was America's first official hosting of the World's Fair. Held in Fairmount Park from May to November of 1876, it celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Nearly 10 million people, roughly 1 in 5 Americans, attended. It was far more than just a fair. It was a deliberate showcase of Enlightenment philosophy brought to life on American soil. The central message was clear. After 100 years of experimental independence, America had established itself as an industrial powerhouse guided by progress and innovation, the very ideals that inspired past visionaries like Francis Bacon, John Fenwick, and William Penn. The star attraction of the exposition was the massive 1,400 horsepower coreless steam engine, a 45-foot tall marvel that powered hundreds of other machines across Machinery Hall, an arena built to showcase humanity's mastery over nature through technology. Emperor Dom Pedro II of Brazil, the only foreign head of state in attendance, famously helped start the massive coreless engine. Visitors also saw Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, Thomas Edison's electric pen, George Westinghouse's electric lights, and countless other prototype machines. However, perhaps the most symbolically significant attraction was the right arm and torch of the unfinished Statue of Liberty. The first part of Frederic Auguste Bartholdi's statue was shown as a large outdoor exhibit on the grounds of Fairmount Park, Philadelphia. It arrived late, in August of 1876, and was placed outdoors, emerging from a nondescript white tent near a lake. Visitors paid 50 cents to climb a ladder inside the arm and stand on the balcony around the flame of the torch. This helped raise funds for the statue's completion. It was one of the more popular attractions, even though it wasn't listed in the official catalog due to its delayed arrival. The outdoor setup, beside a sparkling lake, made this colossal copper creation burn as a beacon, leading the way to the future. The Philadelphia World's Fair, in tandem with steady trade relations, helped launch the colonial revival movement and introduced the world to the American dream. A fresh wave of immigrants began flooding in. The promise of the New World had been announced to the nations who watched as America overcame all odds. Truly a Cinderella story. Another successful exhibitor at the 1876 World's Fair was the DuPont Company from nearby Wilmington, Delaware. In Machinery Hall, DuPont proudly displayed their high-quality black powder in carefully arranged samples of different granulations. The exhibit received an official award and was widely praised. By the late 19th century, The DuPont family name held a significant role in military and industrial leadership. Admiral Samuel Francis DuPont, a respected Civil War naval hero, served as a high-level officer and helped manage logistical aspects of the Philadelphia Centennial Exposition. The DuPont name stood at the intersection of science and art, the very foundations of the New Atlantis. The 1876 Centennial Expo was proudly and openly steeped in Enlightenment symbolism. The outdoor fairgrounds featured grand neoclassical buildings, various statues of the national deity, Lady Liberty, and various tributary altars to scientific research and development. There were many subtle undercurrents during this exposition that would have appeared as common celebration to the uninitiated, but to the enlightened, this was not just a celebration, it was a statement. The spirit of America had fully manifested. Freemasons and other fraternal orders played visible roles in parades and reenactments. The externalization of the hierarchy had begun. The fair's emphasis on sacred geometry in architecture, classical symbolism in art, and the pursuit of humanity's perfection through knowledge echoed much older esoteric traditions and utopian philosophies. The Centennial Exposition wasn't just about looking backward at 100 years of independence. It was America confidently announcing to the world that the Enlightenment experiment had succeeded, and that the future would be even brighter. Through the final decades of the 19th century, military technology would experience several advancements. The old brick forts were becoming obsolete against steel-hulled warships and longer-range artillery. Fort Mott, on the Jersey side of the coastal defense system in the Delaware Bay, was expanded with massive reinforced concrete batteries between 1896 and 1902. Its heavy disappearing guns and mortars were positioned to dominate the river channel. On the Delaware side, the older battery at Delaware City was also upgraded and officially renamed Fort DuPont in 1899. It was named in honor of Rear Admiral Samuel Francis DuPont. The prestigious military connections, combined with the world-famous chemical legacy, made DuPont one of Delaware's most powerful and influential families. Their industrial success alone heavily influenced the local economy, politics, and philanthropy for generations. Together, Fort Delaware on Peapatch Island, Fort Mott in New Jersey, and Fort DuPont in Delaware formed a powerful triangular kill zone. Any enemy vessel would have to sail directly into concentrated fire from riflemen, mortars, and rapid-fire heavy artillery. The three forts protected the commercial heart of the mid-Atlantic and the most direct route to Philadelphia. These fortifications were actively manned during the Spanish-American War of 1898 and World War I of the 20th century, but they never fired on an enemy ship. Certainly, they were a strong deterrent. By World War II, however, aircraft and long-range missiles made these archaic beasts obsolete. The forts were decommissioned and the grounds were eventually reclassified as state parks. The river that John Fenwick once saw as a safe haven for political freedom and religious liberty, the river that the Lenape saw as a source of life and peace, had suddenly become a strategic corridor of American trade and national defense. The Enlightenment dream of building an independent, progress-driven society had taken on a distinctively 20th century form, with military research and development at the helm. Such is the everlasting cycle of violence. The DuPont family is still one of America's most prominent and wealthiest industrial dynasties, best known for founding the E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company, which began with gunpowder and grew into a global chemical giant. The family traces back to Pierre Samuel DuPont de Nemours, born in Paris, France in 1739, to a watchmaker father, Samuel DuPont. Pierre was a Huguenot, a French Protestant, and one of the founding fathers of physiocracy, a scientific method for economics. He served in French government roles, including President of the National Constituent Assembly during the early French Revolution, and he championed liberal economic reforms. During the French Revolution's violent phases, Pierre and his family faced danger. He was nearly guillotined, but escaped. In 1800, he immigrated to the United States with his two surviving sons and other relatives, seeking new opportunities. E.I. DuPont was Pierre's younger son and the key business founder in America. Trained in gunpowder manufacturing in France, E.I. noticed the poor quality of American black powder during a hunting trip. In 1802, he established a powder mill on the Brandywine River near Wilmington, Delaware, founding E.I. DuPont de Nemours and Company. The geographical site was perfect for its combination of water power, timber, and stone. The company made large profits by supplying American forces with premium gunpowder during the War of 1812. It quickly became the largest black powder manufacturer in the world. The family built estates along the Brandywine, with the original powder mill site still standing as part of the Hagley Museum today. In 1850, E.I.'s son, Henry DuPont, expanded operations aggressively. Henry acquired more powder works than any competitor in the field and dominated the explosives market. The DuPont legacy became entrenched in the Delaware Valley area, shaping its economy and politics for centuries to come. The family benefited from violence and volatility, though this also led to tragic accidents and explosions at their plants. During the Civil War, DuPont became the Union's primary supplier of high-quality black powder. Under Henry DuPont's leadership, the company refused to sell anything to the Confederacy, viewing secession as treason. They supplied millions of pounds of powder to Northern forces, helping secure key Union victories. DuPont was the undisputed king of explosives in America, but the company faced a serious problem. Their main powder works facility along the Brandywine River in Delaware was becoming dangerously crowded, and local communities were growing uneasy about living so close to massive stores of gunpowder. DuPont needed a new site, somewhere safe, accessible, and expandable. In 1892, the company selected a large tract of land in Salem County, New Jersey, at a place called Deepwater Point. The location was chosen for three critical reasons. First, it sat directly on the deepest point of the Delaware River. This allowed easy, large-scale shipping of raw materials in and finished explosives out. Second, it was conveniently located just across the river from DuPont's main headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware, close enough for executives to keep a watchful eye, yet far enough to contain the inevitable risk. Third, the rural, sparsely populated farmland of Salem County provided a natural safety buffer. Company leaders were deeply concerned about catastrophic explosions, a fear that would prove tragically justified in the decades to come. Construction began quickly. By late 1892, DuPont opened its new smokeless powder plant. Unlike the old black powder plant that had made the family fortune, This new nitrocellulose-based powder was more powerful, cleaner, and in high demand by the U.S. military and commercial users. In 1902, back in Brandywine, across the river, 3 cousins, T. Coleman DuPont, Alfred I. DuPont, and Pierre S. DuPont, bought out older relatives and took control of the company, preventing a sale to outsiders. They modernized and shifted the company from explosives toward broader chemistry and research. They began with massive growth into chemical synthetics, such as nylon, rayon, Teflon, and Kevlar. Pierre S. DuPont was the major philanthropist among the trio of cousins. He created Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania, an 1,100-acre botanical garden, and he invested heavily into General Motors, serving as GM president in the 1920s. The DuPonts built lavish estates and became the face of Delaware's wealth and power. Most family members found their way into politics, military, or business. In 1914, Henry Francis DuPont, known as Harry, inherited this legacy of scientific industry, but he chose a different path. While his family's company fueled the battlefield, he turned his attention to the land itself. Educated in scientific agriculture at Harvard, Harry was deeply impacted by the construction of Longwood Gardens. He took over the estate and transformed it into a model of progressive farming and horticulture. He bred record-breaking dairy cattle and curated one of America's most celebrated naturalistic gardens. Vast displays of azaleas, daffodils, and rare plants that changed with the seasons. His work further influenced agricultural practices across South Jersey's farming regions and the broader Delaware Valley area. In 1951, he opened the garden to the public as a museum of American decorative arts, an Enlightenment act of sharing knowledge and beauty with future generations. Meanwhile, the early phases of World War I had begun, and the DuPont factory in Deepwater exploded in size, literally and figuratively. The plant expanded to nearly 70 times its pre-war capacity in order to meet the Allies' desperate need for munitions. Thousands of workers poured in. At its peak, it was one of the largest explosives manufacturing sites in the world. But success came at a cost. Multiple deadly explosions rocked the facility in its early decades, claiming workers' lives and reminding everyone of the dangerous bargain DuPont had struck with the god of war. Shortly after Harry received his inheritance, around 1917, the Deepwater location rapidly built housing for its workers to support the wartime boom, employing as many as 25,000 men at its peak. The company constructed streets, infrastructure, and hundreds of modest homes in the Deepwater and Carneys Point area, creating a quickly assembled company town to house the influx of technicians, engineers, scientists, and laborers. At the conclusion of World War I, explosive powder production at the site scaled back significantly. To maneuver alongside the changes in supply and demand, DuPont's arsenal evolved beyond explosives. The Deepwater site was transformed into a massive organic chemicals and dyestuffs plant, one of the largest in the Western Hemisphere. The company developed and manufactured hundreds of synthetic chemicals that would reshape modern life, such as dyes, coatings, and later the building blocks for plastics and polymers. By the 1940s, as global tensions were resurfacing, DuPont prepared for yet another historic endeavor. During World War II, the deepwater facility played a dual role. It continued large-scale chemical production while secretly contributing to the Manhattan Project. From 1942 to 1947, with some activities extending into 49, DuPont conducted critical research and production of uranium materials, including work with uranium hexafluoride and other compounds essential to uranium enrichment and atomic research. These efforts helped fuel early nuclear reactors and supported America's race to develop the atomic bomb. DuPont's contributions to the Manhattan Project, most famously the design, construction, and operation of the massive plutonium production facilities at Hanford, Washington, heavily guided the development of the atomic bomb. The bombs were dropped on Japan in August 1945, effectively ending World War II. At the deepwater facility, uranium-related operations gradually wound down after the war. The site was decontaminated by contemporary standards and returned to normal chemical manufacturing. Today, while DuPont is no longer directly operated as a family firm, their influence persists through trusts, foundations, and Delaware's cultural landscape. As DuPont was reaching the end of their nuclear research program, another volatile entity was coming to the end of its existence. Aleister Crowley, the infamous British occultist and founder of the religion of Thelema, died on December 1, 1947. His body was cremated, and according to his will, his ashes were to be preserved by the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, the occult order that he led. Instead, they made a quiet journey across the Atlantic Ocean. Crowley's chosen successor, Karl Germer, had settled in New Jersey after World War II. Germer and his wife, Sasha, lived on a modest property in the hills of Hampton, New Jersey, about 70 miles north of Salem County. Karl Germer was born on January 22, 1885, in Elberfeld, Germany. A decorated veteran of World War I, he served as a military intelligence officer, and he earned the Iron Cross. After the war, he became deeply involved in the occult, joining the OTO and rising quickly as Aleister Crowley's most trusted liaison in Germany. Germer translated several of Crowley's works into German and worked tirelessly to spread Thelema across Europe during the 1920s and 30s. When the Nazis came to power, Germer's association with Crowley, whom the regime viewed as a dangerous degenerate, made him a target. In 1935, the Gestapo arrested him in Leipzig and sent him to a concentration camp. He was first held at Columbia House, a notorious prison in Berlin used for political prisoners. He was then transferred near the Dutch border, where he spent roughly 10 months. Though eventually he was released, Germer faced continued persecution. In 1941, with assistance from his American wife, Sasha, Karl Germer managed to escape Europe and immigrate to the United States, where he settled in New Jersey. After Aleister Crowley's death in 1947, Germer became the designated successor as outer head of the order, the OHO of the OTO. In accordance with Crowley's will, his ashes were to be shipped across the Atlantic and kept in Hampton, New Jersey. Around 1950, in a forgetful, casual moment, Sasha Germer took the urn containing Crowley's ashes and scattered them at the base of a tree in their garden. There was no grand ceremony, no public ritual, just a quiet, almost dismissive act in a private backyard, like waterless clouds swept away by the wind. Aleister Crowley existed between the dramatic worlds of spiritual enlightenment, wartime trauma, and the survivability of religious orders in a post-war era. Sounds oddly familiar if you've paid attention thus far. While Crowley himself never lived in New Jersey, his ashes found their way into the same soil where dreams of advanced societies, religious expression, and enlightened knowledge have long taken root. From John Fenwick's vision of a peaceful New Atlantis under the Salem oak, to the geometric mysteries of forts and fairs, from the crossroads of the Revolution to the cradle of the Manhattan Project, from the Pine Barrens legends of the Jersey Devil to the scattered remains of the 20th century's most wicked man, the tri-state area of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey continues to collect strange and powerful stories, even today. The iconic Salem oak, whose branches served as a canopy over the Quaker burial ground in New Salem, stood for over 500 years as a silent witness to the ever-shifting sands of time. On the evening of June 6, 2019, the towering white oak tree was suddenly uprooted and collapsed with a thunderous crash. While the exact cause still remains unclear, old age and soil saturation took most of the blame. However, according to more conspiratorial and esoteric opinions, the fall of the Salem oak has been interpreted as a potent omen, signaling the end of an old American epoch. Because of its reputation as a living link between indigenous stewardship, Quaker pacifism, and early colonial exploration, the toppling of the mighty Salem oak has been seen as a symbolic representation for the uprooting of traditional structures, the collapse of institutional trust, and the clearing for a new cycle of rapid societal transformation. Less than 7 months later, on January 20th, 2020, the first laboratory-confirmed case of COVID-19 would be reported in the United States. The rather prosaic region known as Lenapehoking, Nova Caesarea, West Jersey, or Fenwick's 10th, has served as both crucible and crossroads for America's most ambitious experiments. The fall of the ancient Salem oak in 2019 marked the sudden close of a long chapter in history, turning the page for new forces of disruption and transformation to pollinate across the world. As the great work of the New Atlantis experiment continues to evolve, we must remember that the cycles of industrial innovation, national conflict, and spiritual enlightenment will remain as enduring as the soil itself, until the end of time. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. To set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. For the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to the law of God. Indeed, it cannot. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called by God to go out to the place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And when he went out, he did not know where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, but, as in a foreign land, he lived in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Those who follow God in faith make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been seeking the type of land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old had passed away. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne, saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning nor crying, for all the former things have passed away. Hold fast what you have, so that no one may seize your crown. The one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out from it. And I will write on him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches.